My 32F husband, 33M, said I was being difficult because I didn't know where a jar was. I, 32F, was making dinner the other night. I had prepped everything when my husband, 33M, asked if I needed anything. I asked him to grab me the jar of marmalade from the cabinet. This is a small cabinet above the counter with only 3 shelves, so not a large space to look. As I'm trying to prep the chicken, he begins asking me what shelf it's on and what does it look like. I tell him, I didn't know, name, it's just a jar. Which he responds by saying, why do you have to be difficult? I find the old jar from the fridge and show it to him and he finally finds the jar. I finish cooking dinner and am upset because I didn't like being called difficult and didn't feel like I was being difficult asking him to independently find a jar when I was doing everything else to make dinner for our family. When we talked about it later, he said it was the type of voice I used, implying that he was stupid when I could have just told him where the jar was. I said that I did all the prep work and made dinner and asked him to find one thing, and it frustrated me that he couldn't do the one task I asked him. I didn't know where specifically the jar was, so what did he want me to say? I also argued that me saying, I don't know, it's just a jar, and him calling me difficult were not the same. He stormed out mid-argument and texted, I'm sorry for storming off, but that conversation was going in circles. We both think the other was out of line and we'll just agree to disagree. I don't think we should just agree to disagree. What to do? This is an example of weaponized incompetence. He had on tiny task in a sea of tasks that you were doing and he still needed your assistance. I completely understand why you're frustrated. Would I be correct in guessing that it's not unusual for him to get mad and blame you for things that don't make sense to you? Show him this comic. Why didn't you ask? Ask him if he is that clueless at work. More weaponized incompetence. I'm willing to bet he doesn't pull his weight in the household and does this a lot. Of course he would suggest you agree to disagree. He was the one in the wrong. He can't expect you to handle the entire mental workload. It's a jar. He has eyes and can read. Why does he need your help to find it? Husband 33 per meter sent me 36F photo of someone else's body but my face. How am I supposed to react? I, 36 female, was going to join my husband, M, 33, in the backyard but stopped when I saw him coloring a naked body on his iPad. Shortly after he came in and had another picture showing, of me posing in front of a sign outside, fully clothed of course. So I asked what happened to the naked photo. He told me to stop snooping as he continued to color on my image. He asked why my face is so chubby. I went upstairs quietly. Then he sent me the actual photo he was working on. It's my photo but I'm naked and it's not my body. It's a very nice slender body with perky breasts. In truth I am chubby and my breasts are a bit saggy. I breastfed both our kids plus I'm not super young anymore. So what the fuck am I supposed to feel? I feel hurt but if I talk about it he'll dismiss it and tell me I'm making a big deal out of it. He called me chubby and he has commented that I have saggy breasts on many occasions. Can you please tell me how I'm to process this? Because I am sensitive and emotional and never know if I'm overreacting. He's mad at me now, calling me stupid and the worst partner ever because I take everything overboard. TLDR, my husband sent me an AI photo of my face but with a different, younger, more in shape body. How am I supposed to feel about this? I'm saying this not simply based on the photo but on everything in your post. Your husband is contemptuous of you and emotionally abusive. He enjoys making you feel bad and then abusing you for reacting to it. This is not normal, it's sick and disturbing. Please don't let your kids think that a marriage is supposed to be a man making a woman feel like shit while she stoically absorbs it. Send him a pic with his face on a guy who is ripped and with a huge duck. Is your husband 6 years old? Why is he coloring in her photo? Are the men okay? Like truly okay? I'm at a loss for words. The fact that you even think you're overreacting or being sensitive tells me this man has been bullying you then gaslighting you for a while. This is straight up psychological abuse. I know we're all very quick to jump to leave him on here. But I don't think this is a hee-hee-ho-ho mistake, a joke, or funny. He did this intentionally, to hurt you. To tell you, after birthing and breastfeeding your children, that your body isn't good enough. Honestly, the only solution here is cut his dick off and then leave. He asked why my face is so chubby. Ask him why he has the audacity to ask something like that and throw it back at him, even if he's in shape, because his attitude stinks. If he says your breasts are saggy again, tell him that it's from him dragging you down with his comments, attitude. I'm 49M, wife 46F wants kids, I don't. How do I handle this? I'll try to keep it short. We've been married 5 years. I have 3 children from a previous marriage. My wife has never been married previously and has no kids. We had a discussion before we married about the fact that I don't want to have any more children, and she initially agreed. I feel too old and tired already to start over. Plus 2 of my children are autistic, so I'm worried about any possible genetic components to that. I'm not trying to start a debate about the science of that. I know the real cause of autism isn't fully understood. So I thought we were on the same page with it. About 2 years ago, she informs me that she's changed her mind, and really wants children. I really do understand her desire, and I totally get that the biological clock is about to run out for her. So I said that I would think about it. I gave it serious consideration but ultimately landed on my original decision. She is hurt and angry with me all the time now and has started resenting the fact that I already have kids, especially my daughter who just had a child of her own. This is breaking my marriage and I don't know how to handle it. This isn't one of those issues that we can compromise on. Either we have kids or we don't. One of us gives in, and the other sacrifices for that choice. Thanks for reading. I would really appreciate some feedback on this. Unfortunately, you need to tell her that having more kids isn't ever going to happen, and she either needs to learn to accept that, or you guys need to separate so she can find a man who does want to have a child with her. I'm sorry, but at 46 I think your wife has missed that baby train. At 46 she only has about a 10% chance of getting pregnant. Also at this age 90% of her eggs have developed defects in structure and function, resulting in non-viable pregnancies, birth defects, and genetic disorders. Perhaps your wife should have a talk with her OB/GYN to discuss the reality of having a baby at her age. Maybe hearing the facts from a professional will help. I think a lot of heartbreak lies ahead for your wife no matter what happens. The chance of her having a child naturally at 46 is very slim. It will involve IVF, which is not guaranteed to be successful. If you go through it, each unsuccessful attempt will eat at you both, mentally and financially. If you are successful, you will be looking after an infant in your late 40s or early 50s. You were straightforward and honest from the start. You don't want any more kids. I have a suspicion she was lying and agreed to not have kids, thinking she could change your mind after the marriage. Now, she's panicking. If you can't agree about this, unfortunately, separation is the best solution. Do not compromise by having another child and regretting it later. Well, you already said it. This isn't something you can compromise on. It requires 2 yeses. Unfortunately, you have to have a serious discussion about this and decide whether to stay together without children or separate. Your reasons for not wanting them, though valid, aren't relevant. You don't need to justify it. As we tell women all the time, no is a complete sentence. 2 things spring to mind. 1. The older the male, the higher the likelihood of autistic children. Not certain, but increased. And 2. If you had kids, by the time they are hitting the age to set the world on fire, you're both going to be hitting the age where you're looking to slow down. Would that be fair on them, or the 2 of you? I get the urge to have kids is strong, but that doesn't mean you can or should ignore the realities of life. Not hopeful it will make any difference, but you may want to gently make these points to your wife. Good luck. Hate to be blunt, but your wife made choices in her life that resulted in her not being married until her 40s and never having children. She's 46 and in denial. She can't have it all. My 30F husband 31M refuses to repeat himself. So I have a hard time focusing on more than one thing at a time. For example, if I'm watching a video or reading something and someone says something to me, I likely won't hear it, but I am aware that something was said, so I will put down whatever it is I am doing and ask them to repeat themselves. However, my husband blatantly refuses to repeat himself no matter how many times I apologize for not hearing him the first time. And he will say, I hate repeating myself, or, it's not worth repeating. And it really upsets me. I start to feel like a pos. Why would he be so adamant about not repeating himself just once? It inevitably starts an argument and I usually shut down. I am not sure how to handle this in the future. Just say okay and go back to doing what you're doing. If it's not important enough to him, don't make it important to you. Can you ask him to ask for your attention before he says what he wants? I read books a lot, and if I'm reading and my partner speaks to me, my brain doesn't compute what was said because it's already reading. So I prefer if he says something like, hey hun, can I get your attention for a minute? And then moves on to asking when I look up. You aren't just a robot constantly waiting for him to speak to you, so hopefully he's able to understand and compromise. I'm deaf and people do this to me all the time. It's asshole behavior and really uncalled for. Next time say, fine, not sure why you bothered in the first place. Then go about your business. Do not fall into that toxic trap. If he doesn't know by now that he needs to get your attention first before speaking, then he's never gonna learn. Talking to someone when their attention is elsewhere and expecting that person's attention to instantaneously be all on you is an asshole move. Get their attention first, then say the thing you want. It's not hard. He just found a situation where he gets to make you that bad guy and is running with it. If someone is busy or otherwise occupied, it is common sense to get their attention first. I normally get their attention by saying something like, hey, name, and waiting for some sort of response, normally eye contact. The fact he won't say your name to get your attention first is a bit weird, especially considering that's all he has to do to prevent repeating himself. Ignore it. You're choosing to let it bother you. When people do this to me, I move on with my life. It's their breath that was wasted on a thought that nobody heard. I never hear what an ad is about because it's always the ending words that switch my brain on. It's how I was made, and fuck KKK anybody who can't adjust to something that's entirely beyond my control. I literally say, oh okay, and move on if they don't want to repeat themselves while they have my undivided attention. You could ask him to say your name before talking, or you could just tell him to go fuck himself if that's too much for him to stomach.